Under the neon cross, the Mafia boss kissed the assassin who came to kill him. That night, the city of Westbridge did not sleep, and neither did Dante Rinaldi. From the expansive glass wall of his office on the top floor of the Sanctuary Club, Dante looked down at the streets below. Rain slicked the asphalt, reflecting the chaotic smear of brake lights and street lamps, but the dominant color was always the electric blue of the massive neon cross mounted directly above the club entrance. It hummed with a low, constant vibration that Dante could feel in the soles of his shoes, a beacon in the grime of the district. The cross was a relic, something his mother had insisted upon decades ago when this building was nothing but a crumbling warehouse and a dream. Now, it was a symbol. To some, it meant protection. To others, it was a warning that the ground beneath it belonged to the Rinaldi family. Dante pressed his forehead against the cold glass. He had not slept properly in 3 nights. Insomnia was an old companion, one that sat heavy on his chest and filled his mind with the static of unfinished business. He was 34 years old, but in the reflection of the window, his dark eyes looked older. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than most people in Westbridge earned in a year, yet he wore it like armor rather than finery. He was the king of this concrete jungle, but kings were rarely allowed the luxury of rest. The heavy oak door behind him creaked open, breaking his reverie. Dante did not turn around immediately. He knew the footsteps. "Mercer is here," Luca Brandt said. Luca was his consigliere, a man built like a vending machine with a mind like a steel trap. "He's sweating through his shirt. It is disgusting." Dante sighed, his breath fogging the glass for a fleeting second. "Send him in. And Luca, keep the door closed." Dante moved to his desk, a slab of black marble that looked like a tombstone, and sat down just as Evan Mercer shuffled into the room. Mercer was a city councilman with a weak chin and a weaker moral compass. He looked terrified, clutching a leather briefcase to his chest as if it contained his own heart. "Dante," Mercer said, his voice cracking. "Mr. Rinaldi, thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Sit, Evan," Dante said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that commanded attention without needing to be raised. Mercer sat, perching on the edge of the leather chair. "It is the Harlow Circle," the councilman blurted out, unable to hold back his panic. "They approached me again yesterday. They know about the zoning permits I pushed through for your warehouses. They threatened to go to the press unless I start redirecting construction contracts to their front companies." Luca, standing by the door, let out a scoff of disgust. Dante remained impassive, though his fingers tapped a slow, rhythmic beat on the marble desk, the Harlow Circle. They were a new sickness in Westbridge, a violent, disorganized collective trying to carve out territory with brutality rather than strategy. "They are muscling in everywhere," Mercer continued, sweat beading on his upper lip. "They burned down the laundromat on 5th Street just to send a message. Dante, I cannot hold them off. If they expose me, I go to prison, and your influence in the city council vanishes." Dante stopped tapping. The room went silent. The bass from the club downstairs was a distant, rhythmic thumping like a second heartbeat. "Evan," Dante said softly, "do you think I built this city to let a pack of wild dogs tear it down?" "No, but the Harlow Circle mistakes cruelty for power," Dante said. He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the edge so he loomed over the seated councilman. "They burn, we build. You tell their messenger that you are considering their offer. Stall them. Give me 1 week to locate the head of the snake and cut it off. And if they come for me," Mercer squeaked, "then they answer to me," Dante said, his eyes hard and cold. "You are under my protection. Evan, that used to mean something in this city. It still does." Mercer nodded rapidly, looking relieved but still shaken. As Luca escorted the councilman out, Dante felt the weight of the promise settle on his shoulders. The Harlow Circle was not just a rival, they were chaos, and chaos was bad for business. He walked back to the window, staring out at the neon-soaked rain. He needed to end this war before it truly began. 5 miles away, in a sterile, white-walled apartment that smelled of bleach and lemon polish, Maya Cole sat perfectly still. She was 28 years old, with sharp features and eyes the color of flint. Her hands, resting on her knees, were steady. There was a military precision to the way she held herself, a remnant of a past life she had buried under layers of redacted files and false names. Across from her sat Iris Hale. Iris was a woman made of ice and sharp angles, the handler for the Harlow Circle's wet work. She slid a manila envelope across the glass coffee table. It moved with a dry hiss. "The target is Dante Rinaldi," Iris said. Her voice was devoid of inflection. "He runs the Sanctuary Club. He's the reason the Circle cannot expand into the downtown district. He thinks he is untouchable." Maya did not reach for the file immediately. She studied Iris. "You want to hit on a boss? That is not a standard contract. Iris, that is a declaration of war. We are already at war. We just haven't announced it yet," Iris replied. She tapped a perfectly manicured fingernail on the envelope. "The payment is $2 million. Half now. Half upon completion." Maya looked at the envelope. 2 million. That was the number. That was the exit strategy. It was enough to buy a new identity, a house on a beach in a country with no extradition treaty, and the silence she had craved for 5 years. "Timeline?" Maya asked, picking up the file. "1 week," Iris said. "He needs to be dead before the next city council vote. Make it public. Make it loud. We want Westbridge to know the Rinaldi era is over." Maya opened the dossier. The first thing she saw was a photograph of Dante Rinaldi. It was a candid shot, taken from a distance. He was stepping out of a black sedan, looking grim. He was handsome, in a severe, classical way, but Maya had trained herself not to see men, only targets. She flipped the page to his profile. Subject: Dante Rinaldi. Age: 34. Associated with racketeering, illegal gambling, and extortion. Her eyes scanned the paragraphs detailing his rise to power. It painted a picture of a ruthless tyrant who ruled through fear. Then she reached the section on the St. Jude's massacre. 3 years ago, a shootout in a residential neighborhood had left 4 civilians dead. The file claimed Dante had ordered the hit personally to clear out a rival gang. Maya felt her jaw tighten. She had a rule: no women, no children, no innocents. If Rinaldi was a butcher who gunned down bystanders, putting a bullet in him wasn't just a job, it was a public service. But as she read the police report attached to the back of the file, a frown creased her forehead. The time of the massacre was listed as 11 o'clock at night. A witness statement on the very next page, buried in a footnote, placed Dante at a charity gala across the city at the exact same time. "There are inconsistencies here," Maya said, looking up at Iris. "This report says he was at a fundraiser when the St. Jude shooting happened." Iris waved a hand dismissively. "He has paid off half the police force. Maya, he buys alibis like you buy groceries. Do not let the paperwork fool you. The man is a monster. He creates orphans. You are just taking out the trash." Maya looked back at the photo of Dante. His eyes in the picture were not the eyes of a man who enjoyed chaos. They looked tired. But Iris was right. Mafia bosses were experts at deception. And $2 million was a lot of money. "I will take the job," Maya said, closing the file. "Good," Iris said, standing up. "Do not miss. The Circle does not forgive failure." 2 days later, Maya stepped through the heavy double doors of the Sanctuary Club. The noise hit her first, a wall of sound, a deep, driving bass that vibrated in her chest. Then the lights. The club was a masterpiece of shadow and illumination. Above the dance floor, where hundreds of bodies moved in a rhythmic wave, the ceiling was open to a glass skylight. Through it, the giant blue neon cross on the roof cast a long, spectral shadow over the crowd below. It was eerie and beautiful, bathing the revelers in a church-like glow. Maya was not Maya tonight. She was Elena, a bartender with a frantic work history and a believable sob story who had been hired by the bar manager that afternoon. She wore the uniform, a black button-down shirt and fitted trousers, and she had her hair tied back in a severe bun. She moved behind the long mahogany bar, her eyes scanning the room. She was mapping exits, counting security guards, and identifying blind spots. Her hands moved automatically, wiping down the counter. arranging glassware. She was a chameleon. She belonged everywhere and nowhere. Then she looked up. On the mezzanine level, overlooking the dance floor, was a private VIP balcony. Dante Rinaldi stood there. He was leaning against the railing, holding a tumbler of amber liquid that he wasn't drinking, even from this distance. The power radiating off him was palpable. The guards around him were tense, their eyes darting, but Dante was still. He looked like a statue carved from grief. Maya watched him for a second too long. As if sensing her gaze, Dante's head turned, his eyes locked onto hers across the expanse of the club. It was a physical impact, like a shove to the chest. He didn't look away. He didn't smile. He just studied her with a terrifying intensity. Maya forced herself to look down, pretending to busy herself with cutting limes. Her heart rate had not spiked, but her instincts were screaming. He was not a soft target. An hour into her shift, the crowd at the bar thinned slightly. Maya was drying a glass when a hush seemed to fall over the immediate area. She turned around and found Dante standing on the other side of the bar, up close. He was devastating. The photos in the file did not capture the texture of his presence. He smelled of expensive cologne, tobacco, and rain. His suit was impeccable, and the dark circles under his eyes gave him a dangerous, weary allure. "You are the new hire," Dante said. It wasn't a question. His voice was low, cutting through the music without effort. "Yes, sir," Maya said, keeping her voice neutral. "Elena, it is my first night." Dante rested his elbows on the bar, leaning in slightly. The proximity set Maya's nerves on edge. She calculated 3 ways to incapacitate him with the ice pick, sitting 6 inches from her hand. "You are very efficient, Elena," Dante said, his eyes searching her face. "You scan the room like you are expecting a raid." Maya froze internally. She'd been too obvious. She forced a small, nervous smile. "Just nervous, Mr. Rinaldi. I want to do a good job. This is the best club in the city." "It is," Dante agreed, though he sounded bored by the fact. "Pour me a Negroni. Do not make it too sweet." Maya nodded and turned to the bottles. She grabbed the gin, the Campari, the vermouth. She moved with the practiced speed of a bartender, but as she went to pour, her hand faltered slightly under his scrutiny. "Stop," Dante said softly. He reached over the bar. His hand covered hers on the neck of the bottle. His skin was warm, his grip firm but not aggressive. Maya felt a jolt of electricity shoot up her arm, shocking and immediate. It wasn't just surprise, it was a biological reaction, a magnetic pull that she hadn't anticipated. She went rigid, her breath catching in her throat. "You are rushing it," Dante murmured, his face inches from hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Tilt the bottle. Let it breathe. Like this." He guided her hand, tilting the bottle so the liquid flowed smoothly into the mixing glass. For a moment, they were locked together, his chest brushing against the bar, her hand trapped under his. The air between them grew thick, charged with a sudden, confusing heat. Maya stared at him, her lips parting slightly. This was the target. This was the monster. So why did his touch feel like an anchor? Dante pulled back slowly, his fingers lingering on her wrist for a fraction of a second before he let go. He picked up the drink she finished making, his eyes never leaving hers. "You are too serious for this place." "Elena," he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less haunted. "Try to smile. It confuses people." He took a sip of the drink, nodded his approval, and turned to walk away, disappearing into the crowd. Maya stood there, her hand still burning where he had touched her. She gripped the edge of the bar, anger flushing through her. She was a professional. She did not get flustered, and she certainly did not feel attraction to men she was hired to kill. 2 hours later, the opportunity presented itself. Maya saw Dante head toward the staff-only corridor that led to the back offices and the alleyway exit. He was alone. His guards had stayed at the perimeter of the dance floor. This was the mistake she had been waiting for. She signaled the other bartender to cover her station, claiming she needed to change a keg. She slipped out from behind the bar and moved into the shadows of the hallway. The music faded as she moved deeper into the building. The corridor was dimly lit, the walls painted a dark crimson. Maya reached under her untucked shirt and drew the pistol from the holster at the small of her back. She screwed the suppressor onto the barrel in 3 smooth motions. She moved silently, her footsteps making no sound on the carpet. She rounded the corner, raising the weapon. Dante was at the end of the hall, his back to her. He was standing near the exit door. Maya took a breath, her finger tightening on the trigger. It was a clean shot, center mass, 2 bullets, then out the back door and into the night. "I'm sorry, Dante. I swear, I did not mean to mess it up." The voice stopped her. It was young, panicked, and sobbing. Maya lowered the gun an inch, stepping into the shadow of a doorway to listen. She saw a young man, barely 20, slump against the wall in front of Dante. It was Nico, Dante's cousin. Maya recognized him from the file. "Stop crying, Nico," Dante said. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "They cornered me," Nico stammered, tears streaming down his face. "I lost the shipment, Dante, the whole thing. Luca is going to kill me. He said if I screwed up again, I was out." Dante reached out. Maya expected a strike. She expected the violence the file had promised. Instead, Dante grabbed Nico by the shoulders and pulled him into a rough embrace. He held the shaking boy, one hand patting the back of his head. "Luca isn't going to touch you," Dante said firmly. "I will handle Luca, and I will cover the loss of the shipment. But it is $50,000. Nico sobbed into Dante's shoulder. "It is only money," Dante said softly. "You are blood. You are my brother's son. As long as I am breathing, nobody hurts you. Do you understand? Now dry your face. You look like a child." Maya stood frozen in the shadows. The gun felt heavy in her hand. This was not the man from the dossier. The man from the dossier would have beaten Nico for incompetence. The man from the dossier was a sociopath. The man in front of her was protecting his family with a gentleness that contradicted everything Iris had told her. Inconsistencies, she thought. The word echoed in her mind. Dante stepped back from Nico, handing him a handkerchief. "Go out the back. Go home. I will see you on Sunday for dinner." Nico nodded, wiping his eyes, and slipped out the exit door. Dante stood alone in the hallway for a moment. He rolled his neck, letting out a long sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Maya holstered her weapon. She couldn't take the shot. Not now. Not when she didn't have the full picture. She turned and slipped back toward the bar, her mind racing. She was wiping down the counter with aggressive force when Dante emerged from the hallway 5 minutes later. He looked just as composed as before, the mask of the boss back in place. He walked toward the bar, his eyes finding hers immediately. He stopped in front of her, and he didn't order a drink. He just looked at her. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw was set. "Rough night, Elena?" he asked quietly. Maya looked up. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to see the monster. But all she saw was the man who had hugged his crying cousin. "Just a long one," she said, her voice tighter than she intended. Dante studied her. His gaze dropped to her hands, which were gripping the bar rag too tightly, then back to her eyes. He didn't know who she was. He couldn't know, but he sensed something. A slow, half-smile curved his lips. It wasn't the polite smile from earlier. It was something more intimate, something knowing. "Get some rest when you get out of here," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave, wrapping around her like smoke. "I have a feeling you are going to be trouble for me." He turned and walked away, heading back to his tower. Maya watched him go, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She told herself it was adrenaline. She told herself it was fear of being caught. But as she watched his broad shoulders disappear into the shadows of the staircase, she knew it was a lie. She had come here to kill a stranger, but the man under the neon cross was becoming something much more dangerous. He was becoming real, and for the first time in her life, Maya Cole wasn't sure if she wanted to pull the trigger. The coffee in the styrofoam cup was stone cold, much like the expression on Iris Hale's face. Maya sat in the passenger seat of a nondescript sedan parked in the shadow of a derelict shipyard on the edge of Westbridge. The rain hammered against the roof, a relentless drumbeat that did little to drown out the tension inside the vehicle. Maya stared straight ahead through the rain-streaked windshield, her hands resting loosely in her lap, concealing the tremor of adrenaline that still lingered from her shifts at the Sanctuary Club. "You've been inside for 3 days," Iris said, her voice sharp and precise. "Dante Rinaldi is still breathing. Why?" Maya did not flinch. She had rehearsed this. "The target is paranoid. He's surrounded by guards constantly. If I take the shot on the floor, I get taken down by his security before I reach the exit. I need to get him alone." It was a lie, a partial one. At least, she had had the opportunity in the hallway. The night she watched Dante comfort his cousin, she could have put 2 bullets in the back of his head and walked away, but she hadn't. She left that part out. Iris turned her head slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Do not get comfortable, Maya. You are not there to pour drinks. You are there to end a dynasty." Iris reached into her purse and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping, tossing it onto the dashboard. It was yellowed, old. The headline detailed a single car accident on a highway 3 years ago. "You remember Arthur?" Iris asked softly. "He was one of our best. He took a contract on a union leader in Chicago." He hesitated. He thought he saw a way out, a way to take the money without finishing the job. They found him in that car, or what was left of him. Maya looked at the clipping, then back at Iris. The threat hung heavy in the damp air. "I'm not Arthur," Maya said, her voice steel. "And I do not hesitate. I just want to survive the extraction. I will get it done." "See that you do," Iris said, unlocking the doors. "The circle is watching, and we do not like waiting." Maya stepped out into the rain, the door slamming shut behind her. As she watched the taillights fade into the mist, the weight of the pistol tucked against her spine felt heavier than it ever had before. High above the dance floor of the Sanctuary Club, Dante Rinaldi stood in the shadows of his office balcony. The bass from the speakers below vibrated through the soles of his shoes, a constant, rhythmic heartbeat of the building. "Luca," Dante said without turning around. Luca Brandt stepped out of the darkness of the office, holding a tablet. "Boss?" "The new bartender," Dante said, nodding toward the long mahogany bar downstairs where Maya, known to him as Elena, was moving with a blur of efficiency. "Run a check on her, a soft one. Do not spook her." Luca frowned, stepping up to the railing to look down. "Elena! She seems solid. She shows up on time. She does not steal from the till. What is the problem?" "She's too good," Dante murmured. He watched as she navigated the crowded bar, sliding a drink to a customer while simultaneously taking cash from another, her head on a swivel. She moves like she is in combat, not a nightclub. She tracks the exits. She watches the security rotations. "Maybe she has worked in rough places before," Luca suggested. "Maybe," Dante said. He took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes fixated on the way a stray lock of dark hair fell across her forehead and the sharp, impatient way she tucked it back. "Just check her employment history. I want to know who she is." "You like her," Luca said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Dante shot him a sharp look. "I am suspicious of her. There is a difference." "If you say so," Luca replied, tapping the tablet. "I will make some calls." Dante turned back to the floor. He told himself it was just caution. A man in his position could not afford blind spots. But as he watched her laugh at something a customer said, a guarded, fleeting smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, he felt a pull in his chest that had nothing to do with business. He wanted to know what was behind that smile. He wanted to know what made a woman with eyes that cold look so fire-hot when she thought no one was watching. 2 nights later, the Sanctuary Club was at capacity. The air was thick with smoke, perfume, and the sweat of 500 bodies moving to the music. Maya was behind the VIP bar, a separate station cordoned off by velvet ropes and 2 massive security guards. She was exhausted. The double life was wearing her down. Every time Dante walked into the room, her heart hammered a warning rhythm against her ribs. She was waiting for the right moment to kill him, and terrified that the moment would actually come. "Hey, sweetheart, I am talking to you." Maya snapped out of her thoughts and looked at the man in front of her. He was huge, wearing a suit that was too tight and a heavy gold chain. He was drunk, his face flushed red, one of the Harlow Circle's low-level enforcers, though he clearly didn't recognize her. "I told you, sir," Maya said, keeping her voice calm. "The bar is closed for service. You have had enough. I decide when I have had enough," the man snarled. He reached over the bar, grabbing her wrist. His grip was wet and bruising. Maya didn't think. Instinct took over. She didn't pull away. She stepped in, twisting her arm to break his grip against the thumb. The man howled in surprise, stumbling back. "You bitch!" he screamed. The music seemed to drop away as the man reached into his jacket. Maya saw the glint of metal before anyone else did. The security guards were too far away, looking at a disturbance near the entrance. The gun cleared the man's holster. Maya vaulted over the bar top. It was a fluid, singular motion. She landed in a crouch in front of him, her left hand chopping down on his forearm, deflecting the barrel of the gun toward the floor. With her right hand, she drove her palm into his chin, snapping his head back. As he staggered, she swept his legs, driving him into the carpet. Before the crowd could even scream, Maya had her knee pressed into the small of his back and the gun stripped from his hand. She ejected the magazine and cleared the chamber in one smooth motion, sliding the weapon across the floor away from his reach. "Stay down," she commanded, her voice cutting through the sudden silence of the VIP section. Then the world rushed back in. Guards were shouting, people were screaming, and hands were grabbing her. "Let her go!" Dante's voice was a thundercrack. The guards who had seized Maya's arms released her instantly. Dante pushed through the circle of onlookers, his face pale with fury. He looked at the man on the floor, then at Maya, who was standing perfectly still, her chest heaving slightly, her eyes wide. "Get him out of here," Dante ordered the security team, pointing at the groaning thug. "And break his hand before you throw him in the alley." He turned to Maya. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask how a bartender learned to disarm a gunman in under 3 seconds. He just reached out, grabbing her arm, and pulled her away from the staring crowd. "Come with me," he said roughly. He dragged her through a service door and into the quiet of the back administrative corridor. The noise of the club muffled to a dull thrum. Dante marched her down the hall until they were alone, then spun her around to face him. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. His hands were on her shoulders, gripping her tightly. His eyes frantically scanned her face and body for injuries. "I'm fine," Maya said, breathless. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving her shaking. "He was drunk. He was slow. He had a gun." "Elena!" Dante shouted, the name sounding foreign on his tongue now. "You jumped over a bar to fight a man with a gun. Are you insane?" "The guards were too slow," she shot back, stepping into his space. "He was going to start shooting. I stopped him." Dante stared at her, his chest rising and falling rapidly. The anger in his eyes shifted, morphing into something darker, more intense. He looked at her not as an employee, but as a force of nature. He realized then that she was dangerous. He knew he should be terrified, but he wasn't. "Thank you," he said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. He stepped closer, crowding her against the wall. The hallway was narrow, forcing them into an intimacy that felt suffocating and electric. "You saved my customers. You saved my people." "I just reacted," Maya whispered. She could smell the whiskey on his breath, feel the heat radiating from his body. Her pulse was racing, not from the fight, but from the way his thumbs were brushing against her collarbones. "I owe you," Dante murmured. His gaze dropped to her mouth. The air between them seemed to snap. The tension that had been building for days, the stolen glances, the accidental touches, finally reached a breaking point. Dante leaned in. It wasn't a demand, it was a question. He paused an inch from her lips, giving her the chance to push him away. Maya didn't move. She couldn't. Every instinct she had screamed that this was a mistake, that this was treason, that this was suicide. But the woman beneath the assassin just wanted him to close the gap. He brushed his lips against hers. It was slow, testing, soft, a stark contrast to the violence of the moment before. Maya let out a shaky breath, her eyes fluttering shut. When she didn't pull away, Dante groaned low in his throat. His hands slid up from her shoulders to cup her face, his fingers tangling in the hair at the nape of her neck. He deepened the kiss, and suddenly, it wasn't soft anymore. It was hungry. It was desperate. Maya made a sound of need, her hands clutching the lapels of his jacket, pulling him closer. Their mouths moved together with a frantic energy, tasting of adrenaline and forbidden want. For a few seconds, the mission didn't exist. Iris didn't exist. There was only the heat of his body and the taste of him. Then reality crashed back in. Maya gasped, planting her hands on his chest and shoving him back. She stumbled away from him, her lips swollen and tingling. "I can't," she breathed, her voice trembling. "I have to go." Dante stood there, dazed, his hand reaching out to empty air. "Elena, wait!" But she was already running. She pushed through the exit door and fled into the night, leaving him standing alone in the hallway with the taste of her still on his lips. The apartment was dark. Maya sat on the edge of her narrow bed, her knees drawn up to her chest. Her fingers traced the line of her lower lip, ghosting over the place where Dante had kissed her. She was angry, furious. "He's the target," she hissed into the silence of the room. "He's the target. He's the target." But the mantra felt hollow. She closed her eyes and saw his face. Not the face of a mob boss, but the face of the man who had looked at her with terrified concern. She felt the phantom weight of his hand on the back of her neck. It hadn't felt like possession. It had felt like reverence. She grabbed the pillow and threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a soft thud. She was compromised. She knew it. Iris would kill her if she knew. But as Maya lay back on the mattress, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't make herself regret the kiss. She only regretted that she had stopped. Dante poured 3 fingers of scotch into a crystal glass. He didn't drink it. He just held it, staring at the amber liquid swirling in the light. He was in his office. The door locked. The club was closing down, the music fading to a distant murmur. He couldn't get the moment out of his head, the way she had moved, so fast, so lethal. And then the way she had melted into him. He had felt her fear, yes, but he had also felt her desire. It had mirrored his own. For years, Dante had felt dead inside. He went through the motions of running the syndicate, of keeping the peace, of being the monster everyone expected him to be. He was numb. Tonight, for the first time in a decade, he felt alive. His blood was singing in his veins. "Who are you? Elena?" he whispered to the empty room. He knew she was lying about something. Normal bartenders didn't take down armed thugs, but he found that he didn't care about the lie as much as he cared about the woman telling it. He took a drink, the burn of the alcohol matching the burn in his chest. He wasn't going to let her run. Not now. The dynamic shifted after that night. Dante didn't fire her. He didn't interrogate her. Instead, he pulled her closer. He started inventing reasons to keep her near him. He asked her to stay after the club closed to help count out the cash drawers in his office. It was work that Luca usually did, but Luca wisely kept his mouth shut. These late nights became a ritual. The heavy oak door would close, shutting out the world. The only sound was the rustle of bills and the scratching of a pen. "Do you like jazz?" Dante asked one night, breaking the silence. He was sitting on the edge of his desk, watching her stack 20s. Maya looked up, surprised. "Some of it? Why?" "My father hated it," Dante said, a small smile playing on his lips. "He said it was chaotic, that it had no rules. That is why I listened to it." He walked over to the vintage record player in the corner and dropped the needle. A slow, mournful saxophone filled the room. "It is honest," Maya said quietly. "It doesn't try to be perfect." Dante looked at her, his eyes softening. "And you? Do you try to be perfect, Elena?" "I try to be invisible," she replied without thinking. "You are failing." Dante said, "I see you." They ordered takeout from a 24-hour diner down the street. They sat on the leather sofa in his office, eating greasy fries and talking about things that didn't matter, which meant they mattered the most. They talked about the rain. They talked about the skyline. Maya told him about growing up in a foster home in Ohio, a truth she hadn't planned on sharing. Dante told her about the first time he saw the ocean. In these moments, Maya saw the cracks in his armor. She saw a man who was lonely, who carried the weight of his family's sins like a cross. And Dante saw a woman who was constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for a blow that never came. It was a Tuesday, a week after the fight. The rain had turned into a deluge, flooding the gutters of Westbridge. "I'm driving you home," Dante said as Maya clocked out. "It wasn't a request." "I can take a cab," she said, pulling on her coat. "Not in this weather," Dante said, grabbing his keys. "And not with the circle hitting targets on the south side. Get in the car." His car was a black luxury sedan, the interior smelling of leather and cedar. It was quiet, sealed off from the storm raging outside. Dante drove with one hand on the wheel, his movements relaxed. Maya sat stiffly in the passenger seat. The confined space was overwhelming. Every time he shifted gears, his hand brushed against her knee. It wasn't intentional, or maybe it was, but every touch sent a spike of heat through her. "You are safe with me, you know," Dante said after a long silence. The wipers slapped a steady rhythm against the glass. Maya looked out the window. "Am I? I would burn this city down before I let anyone hurt you," Dante said. He said it casually, as if stating a fact about the weather. Maya's breath hitched. She looked at him. His profile was illuminated by the passing streetlights. He meant it. The man she was supposed to kill was the only person in the world who was offering her protection. The irony tasted like ash in her mouth. They pulled up to the curb of her apartment building. Dante put the car in park but didn't unlock the doors. The engine hummed beneath them. He turned in his seat to face her. The rain drummed on the roof, a chaotic symphony. "Elena," he said softly. Maya turned. Their eyes met, and the air left the car. "Dante," she whispered. It was the first time she had used his name without a title. He reached out, his hand sliding into the damp hair at the back of her head. He pulled her toward him, but this time he moved slowly, giving her every chance to stop him. She didn't. She leaned forward, meeting him halfway. The kiss was different this time. It wasn't fueled by adrenaline. It was fueled by an aching, terrifying intimacy. His lips were warm and soft. He tasted of mint and longing. Maya let out a low sigh, her hands finding the lapels of his coat, clutching the fabric to anchor herself. Dante groaned, his other hand coming up to cup her jaw, tilting her head back to deepen the angle. His tongue swept into her mouth, slow and deliberate. It felt like a promise. It felt like a claim. Maya felt herself unraveling. The lines between assassin and target were blurring until they were gone. There was only Dante. His fingers tightened in her hair, a possessive grip that made her shiver. She pressed closer to him, climbing over the center console, needing to be nearer. Then the image of Iris flashed in her mind, the newspaper clipping, the dead man in the car, $2 million, 1 week. Maya tore herself away. Gasping for air, she scrambled back into her seat, her chest heaving. "I can't," she choked out. "I can't do this." "Why?" Dante asked, his voice rough, his eyes dark with desire. "Tell me to stop, and I will stop." "But do not tell me you don't feel this." "I can't," she repeated, tears pricking her eyes. She fumbled for the door handle, threw it open, and scrambled out into the pouring rain. She didn't look back. She ran to the entrance of her building, her heart shattering with every step. She was falling in love with a dead man, and she was the one holding the gun. The parking lot was a graveyard of rusted metal and broken glass, illuminated only by the sickly yellow buzz of a dying street lamp. The air smelled of wet concrete and old gasoline. Maya stood near the back of the lot, the collar of her jacket turned up against the biting wind. Iris Hale stepped out of the shadows like a wraith. She wore a pristine trench coat that seemed to repel the grime of the city. Her expression was tight, her patience clearly fraying at the edges. 3 of our distribution centers were raided last night, Iris said, without preamble. Her voice was ice. The Rinaldi family is pushing back harder than we anticipated. We are losing territory, Maya, and we are bleeding money. Maya kept her face neutral. Dante is careful. He moves different routes every night. I need a clean shot. You have had a clean shot, Iris snapped, stepping closer. The space between them crackled with menace. I saw the surveillance photos. You were in the car with him. You were in his office. You're not hunting him. Maya, you are playing house. Iris reached into her pocket and pulled out a heavy, snub-nosed revolver. She pressed it into Maya's hand. The metal was cold against Maya's palm, a dead weight that felt heavier than its physical mass. This ends now, Iris hissed. Use your own weapon. Use this one. Use a knife. I do not care. But if Dante Rinaldi is not in a morgue within 48 hours, the circle will burn your exit strategy. There will be no money, no island, no new life. There will only be a very deep hole in the ground. Do you understand? Maya looked down at the gun. It wasn't a tool anymore. It was a shackle. I understand. Good, Iris said, turning on her heel. Do not make me come back here. The next day, Maya did not go to the club. She needed to clear her head. She needed to remember why Dante Rinaldi was the villain. She trailed him. It was easy enough to follow his black sedan from a safe distance as he made his rounds through the neighborhoods of Westbridge. She watched from across the street as he stopped at a small family-owned bakery. She expected him to shake them down for protection money. Instead, she watched through the shop window as he sat with the elderly owner, drinking espresso. When he left, he didn't take an envelope. He left a stack of cash on the counter, patting the old man on the shoulder with a genuine warmth that made Maya's stomach twist. Later, she followed him to the docks. This was it, she thought. The drug shipment, the poison he pushed into the city. She crept along the catwalk of a warehouse, looking down as Dante stood with 3 men from a Colombian cartel. The air was thick with tension. We can move 10 kilos a week through your club, the cartel representative said. Pure product. The profit margin is 40%. Dante stood with his hands in his pockets, looking bored. I told you last month, I do not move heroin and I do not move fentanyl. You are leaving millions on the table. Rinaldi, the dealer spat. I am keeping my city alive, Dante replied, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. If I see your product in my territory again, I will not send it back. I will burn it, and I will burn the trucks that brought it. Get out. Maya crouched in the shadows, her breath catching in her throat. He had turned down a fortune to keep the streets clean. The file Iris had given her described a monster who preyed on the weak. The man below her was a guardian, a ruthless one. Yes, but a guardian nonetheless. The cognitive dissonance was a physical ache behind her eyes. She wasn't killing a monster. She was killing a man who was arguably better than the people who hired her. That night, the Sanctuary Club was a living thing. The music was a deep, thrumming pulse that vibrated through the floorboards. The neon cross above the skylight bathed the room in a surreal, electric blue haze. Dante found her at the bar. He didn't order a drink. He simply jerked his head toward the VIP section. Take a break, he said. Join me. I am on shift, boss, Maya said, trying to keep the professional barrier up. I own the place, Dante said, a smirk playing on his lips. I say you are on a break. He led her to a private booth in the far corner, tucked away behind heavy velvet curtains that muffled the roar of the crowd. It was intimate, darker than the rest of the club. They sat close, the curved leather seat forcing their thighs to touch. Dante signaled a waitress, who brought a bottle of vintage wine. He poured 2 glasses, the red liquid shimmering in the low light. To surviving another week in Westbridge, he said, clinking his glass against hers. Is it always this hard? Maya asked, taking a sip. The wine was rich, heavy on her tongue. Only when you care about the outcome, Dante said. He shifted, turning his body toward her. His arm rested on the back of the booth, his hand grazing the fabric of her shirt near her waist. The heat of his palm seeped through to her skin. Most people in this city just want to get through the day. Men like me, men like the ones hunting me. We want to shape the day. That takes a toll. You could walk away, Maya said softly. "You have enough money." Dante laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "We are the sum of our choices. Elena, I chose this life when I was 18, or maybe it chose me. Regret is a luxury I cannot afford." "Everyone has regrets," Maya said, her guard slipping under the influence of his proximity and the wine. "Like the St. Jude's massacre. That wasn't just business, was it? That was personal." The air in the booth instantly changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante froze. His hand on the back of the seat stopped moving. He slowly set his glass down on the table. When he looked at her, the warmth was gone, replaced by the sharp, predatory gaze of the dawn. "St. Jude S.," Dante repeated slowly. "That file is sealed. The police report said it was a gang dispute. The papers said it was random. Only the people in the room knew it was personal." He turned fully toward her, his hand sliding from the back of the booth to grip her waist. It wasn't a caress anymore. It was a restraint. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Because a bartender from Ohio does not know about the motive behind a hit that happened 3 years ago." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She had slipped. She had read the deep intel in his file, the parts that weren't public knowledge, and she had let it bleed into the conversation. "I read about it," she stammered, her mind racing for a cover. "On a forum, a crime blog." "No," Dante said, his grip tightening. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "That detail never made the blogs. Who are you really, Elena? And do not lie to me again." She opened her mouth, panic warring with training, but before she could speak, the world exploded. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of automatic gunfire shattered the bass of the music. The front window of the club, 30 feet away, disintegrated in a shower of glass. Screams erupted from the dance floor as bullets tore into the upholstery and the walls. Dante moved before Maya could even process the threat. "Down!" he roared. He tackled her, driving her into the footwell of the booth. His heavy body covered hers completely, shielding her from the debris and the lead. Maya hit the floor hard, the breath knocked out of her, but she felt Dante's hand cupping the back of her head, protecting her skull. "Stay down," he shouted over the chaos, but Maya didn't stay down. Her instincts overrode her cover. She saw a shadow moving near the curtain, a gunman flanking the booth. She shoved Dante's shoulder. "Your left, 3 o'clock." Dante didn't question her. He rolled, drawing a silver pistol from his shoulder holster and firing 2 shots through the velvet curtain. A body hit the floor with a heavy thud. "Move," Dante commanded. He grabbed her hand, pulling her up. They moved as a single unit, crouching low. Dante took point, firing at the silhouette of a shooter near the bar, while Maya checked their 6, grabbing a discarded bottle from a table to use as a weapon since she couldn't draw her own gun without revealing everything. "Back exit," Dante yelled. They sprinted through the kitchen, dodging terrified staff. They burst into the narrow hallway that led to the safe room. A gunman kicked open the rear door. Raising a submachine gun, Maya didn't hesitate. She threw the heavy wine bottle with the precision of a fastball pitcher. It smashed into the gunman's face, stunning him for the split second Dante needed to put a bullet in his shoulder and kick the weapon away. Dante dragged her into the safe room, a reinforced steel box filled with monitors and weapons, and slammed the heavy door shut. Engaging the electronic locks, the silence was deafening. Both of them were panting, chests heaving. Maya's hair was wild, her shirt torn at the shoulder. Dante had a cut on his cheek, blood trickling down into his collar. He stood there for a second, the adrenaline vibrating off him in waves. Then he turned on her. Dante crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed her by the shoulders and slammed her back against the steel wall. It was rough, fueled by the terrifying mixture of combat survival and suspicion. "Did you do this?" he shouted, his face inches from hers. "Did you signal them? Is that why you were asking about the past? To keep me distracted?" "No," Maya yelled back, not flinching. She grabbed his wrists, trying to pry his hands off, but his grip was iron. "I saved your life. I called out the flanker. If I wanted you dead, I would have let him shoot you." "You move like a soldier," Dante growled, pinning her tighter. His body was pressed flush against hers, heavy and hard. "You fight like a killer. You know things you shouldn't know. Tell me the truth. I am not with them, Maya swore, her voice breaking. Tears of frustration and fear welled in her eyes. I didn't know they were coming. I swear to you, Dante. He searched her eyes, looking for the lie. He saw the fear, but he also saw the fire. He saw the woman who had fought beside him in the dark, who had covered his blind side without hesitation. His grip on her shoulders loosened, but he didn't step back. The anger in the room began to curdle into something else. The adrenaline that had been pumping through their veins for survival was now looking for a different outlet. Dante's gaze dropped to her mouth. His breathing was ragged. Maya looked up at him, her chest heaving against his. The tension was a pulled wire, humming, screaming. I should kill you, he whispered. But the threat lacked conviction. It sounded more like a prayer for salvation. Then do it, Maya breathed. Dante made a sound low in his throat, a growl of surrender. He crashed his mouth down onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a collision. It was rage and relief and terrified need all wrapped into one violent embrace. Dante's hands tangled in her hair, pulling her head back to deepen the contact. Maya responded with equal force, her fists bunching in the fabric of his bloody shirt, pulling him closer. They devoured each other. It was a kiss that tasted of copper and survival. Their bodies strained together, hips grinding, seeking friction, seeking proof that they were still alive. Dante pushed his knee between her legs, pressing her harder against the wall, and Maya gasped into his mouth. Arching into the contact. For a minute, there was no lie. There was no assassin and no target. There was just the desperate, clawing need to be close to the only other person in the world who understood the fire they were standing in. Dante pulled back abruptly, gasping for air. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes squeezed shut. His hands were still gripping her waist, his thumbs digging into her skin. Tell me, he rasped, his voice wrecked. Tell me the truth. Elena, before I lose my mind. Maya trembled. She was standing on a precipice. If she told him everything, he would put a bullet in her head. If she lied, he would never trust her again. My name is Maya, she whispered. Dante went still. He opened his eyes, pulling back just enough to look at her face. Maya, he repeated, testing the weight of it. I was hired to get close to you, she confessed, the words tumbling out. To watch you. To find your weaknesses. Dante's jaw tightened. The hurt that flashed in his eyes was worse than the anger. By who? The Harlow Circle. I can't say, Maya said. She couldn't give him Iris. Not yet. That would start a war she wasn't sure he could win tonight. But yes, someone wants you gone. They paid me to find a way in. And the attack tonight? It wasn't me, she said fiercely. They got impatient. They didn't think I was moving fast enough, so they sent a hit squad. Dante stepped back, releasing her. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small room. He looked at the monitors, showing the carnage in the club, then back at her. He knew he should execute her. She was a spy. She was a weapon, pointed at his heart. Every rule of the Costa Nostra demanded she die in this room. But he looked at her, bruised, defiant, beautiful, and he remembered the way she had shielded his back. He remembered the taste of her mouth. He realized with a sickening lurch that the thought of her blood on the floor made him feel colder than death ever could. He couldn't do it. You are burned, Dante said, his voice flat. If they sent a squad, it means they don't trust you anymore. You are a loose end to them now. I know, Maya said quietly. I cannot let you go. Dante continued, turning to face her. If I let you go, they will kill you for failing, or you will finish the job to save yourself. He walked back to her, stopping a foot away. The distance felt like a canyon compared to the heat of a moment ago. You stay with me, Dante said. It was a command. You are my driver now. You are my shadow. You go where I go. You sleep where I sleep. I keep my eyes on you every second of every day. Maya blinked. You want to keep the person hired to kill you as your bodyguard? I want to keep my enemies where I can see them, Dante said, his face a mask of stone. And this way, if you decide to try again, you won't have to look far to find me. Dante, she started, stepping forward. "Do not," he warned, holding up a hand. "Do not make me regret this, Maya, because the next time a gun is pulled, I will not be the one hesitating." He turned back to the monitors to assess the damage to his kingdom. Maya watched his back, seeing the tension in his shoulders. She knew he was lying. He wasn't keeping her close to control the threat. He was keeping her close because he was terrified of the empty space she would leave behind. And as she touched her swollen lips, she realized she was just as terrified. She had come to end his life, and now she was the only thing standing between him and the darkness. "I am in," Maya said softly. Dante didn't turn around, but she saw his shoulders drop, just a fraction. As he let out a breath he had been holding since she walked into the room, the city of Westbridge became a blur of rain-slicked streets and passing streetlights, viewed through the tinted windshield of the black sedan. For 2 weeks, Maya had lived in the breathing space of Dante Rinaldi. She was no longer just a bartender or a ghost in the crowd. She was his shadow. She drove him to sit-downs with union leaders in the industrial district, stood guard by the door while he reviewed ledgers in the back of Italian restaurants, and sat across from him in the silence of his office while the neon cross hummed outside. The proximity was suffocating, but in a way that made it impossible to breathe when she was away from him. "You are driving too fast," Dante murmured from the passenger seat. He had stopped sitting in the back a week ago. He claimed it was easier to talk, but Maya knew it was because he hated the distance as much as she did. "I am driving efficiently," Maya corrected, checking the side mirror. "There is a difference. Besides, you are the one who insisted we make the 7 o'clock meeting with the suppliers." Dante chuckled, a low, rough sound that vibrated in the quiet cabin. "I am the boss. I'm allowed to be late. It builds anticipation." "It builds annoyance," Maya retorted, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "And annoyed people are unpredictable people." Dante turned his head to look at her. The streetlights washed over his face, highlighting the sharp angle of his jaw and the softening of his eyes. "You sound like a strategist, Maya." "I just like to be organized," she said, her grip tightening slightly on the steering wheel. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her knuckles. It was a fleeting touch, barely there, but it sent a shockwave through her arm. They did this constantly now, small, deniable touches. A hand on the small of her back as he guided her through a crowd, her shoulder brushing his arm as they looked at a map. It was a dangerous, silent language they were both becoming fluent in, but the silence was filled with lies. Maya dropped Dante at the club entrance and parked the car in the secured lot. As soon as she was alone, she pulled her burner phone from a hidden compartment under the seat. There was one new message. "Update." She dialed the number, her stomach twisting into a knot. "Report," Iris's voice came through, distorted by the encryption but unmistakable in its coldness. "He's paranoid," Maya lied, keeping her voice steady. "He has doubled the guard rotation. He never sleeps in the same room 2 nights in a row. I cannot get a clean window without being seen." "You are stalling," Iris said. The accusation was sharp. "We are watching the movements. Maya, Rinaldi is not acting like a man under siege. He is expanding. He took back 2 blocks in the South Ward yesterday." "I am working on it," Maya insisted. "I need trust. Iris, if I rush this, I end up dead, and you lose your inside man." "Inside man," Iris repeated mockingly. "Be careful. Maya, we're hearing whispers. Someone in Rinaldi's inner circle is talking to us. If they find out who you are before you finish the job, my protection will not save you. And if I find out you are playing both sides, I will not need a mole to find you." The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone, her heart hammering. A mole. The Harlow circle had someone else inside. She wasn't just hiding from Dante. She was hiding from an invisible predator within his own walls. 2 nights later, the tension in the city snapped. The meeting was supposed to be routine. A negotiation with a logistics supplier in a warehouse district that bordered the river. Dante wanted to secure a new route for legitimate liquor imports, trying to further wash the syndicate's money clean. Maya stood by the metal stairs, scanning the cavernous space. Dante stood in the center, flanked by Luca and 2 other guards, the supplier, a nervous man named Vargas, was sweating. "I told you, Mr. Rinaldi," Vargas stammered. "The price has gone up. The unions are squeezing me. The unions work for me." "Vargas," Dante said calmly, "so do not lie to me about who is squeezing you." The metal door high above on the catwalk slammed open. "Gun!" Maya screamed. She didn't think. She moved. She sprinted across the concrete floor just as the muzzle flashes lit up the rafters. Bullets chewed up the ground where Dante had been standing a second before. He dove behind a stack of crates, pulling his weapon. Maya slid in beside him, her own gun drawn, firing 2 suppressed shots up at the catwalk. A man screamed and fell, hitting the concrete with a sickening thud. "We are flanked!" Luca shouted from the other side of the room. "The back exit," Dante ordered. He turned to Maya. "Cover the left." They moved like a machine. Dante provided suppressing fire while Maya advanced, and then she covered him while he moved. It was a dance of violence they executed perfectly. They reached the heavy steel doors at the rear of the warehouse. Maya kicked the bar, throwing the door open. "Go!" she shouted. Dante stepped through, but a gunman emerged from behind a forklift, leveling a shotgun. Maya shoved Dante hard, sending him stumbling out into the alley. She spun, firing 3 rounds into the gunman's chest, but not before the shotgun roared. The pellets missed her center mass but tore through the sleeve of her jacket and grazed her upper arm. The impact spun her around, sending a white-hot line of fire searing through her flesh. She gritted her teeth against the scream, stumbling out into the rain. Dante was there instantly, grabbing her uninjured arm and hauling her toward the car. "Drive!" he roared at Luca, shoving Maya into the back seat and diving in after her. The safe house was a brownstone in the suburbs, quiet and unassuming, inside. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the throbbing ache in Maya's arm. She sat on the edge of the bathtub in the master bathroom, her jacket and shirt stripped off, leaving her in a black tank top. Dante stood between her knees. His hands, usually so steady on a trigger or a steering wheel, were trembling slightly as he poured antiseptic onto a cloth. "This is going to sting," he said softly. "I know," Maya replied through gritted teeth. He pressed the cloth to the graze. Maya hissed, her hand gripping his thigh reflexively. Dante froze for a second, looking down at her hand on his leg, then continued cleaning the wound with agonizing gentleness. "It is not deep," he murmured, his voice tight. "No stitches, just a bad graze." He worked in silence, bandaging her arm with swift, professional movements. The bathroom was small, the air thick with the smell of copper and rubbing alcohol. When he finished, he didn't step away. He stayed there, standing between her legs, his hands resting on her bare shoulders. His thumbs traced the line of her collarbone, brushing against the skin. "You pushed me out of the way," Dante said. It wasn't a question. "You were the target," Maya said, refusing to look at him. She stared at the buttons of his blood-stained white shirt. "Why?" Dante asked. His hand moved up, cupping her chin and forcing her to look at him. His eyes were dark, searching. "You are my employee. Maya, you are not my shield." "I am your shadow," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Remember?" Dante stared at her, and the wall he had built around himself for years finally crumbled. "I am tired," he confessed, his voice breaking on the last word. "I am tired of the noise. I am tired of the blood, and I am so tired of waking up alone in that house." Maya's eyes softened, the flinty assassin melting away to reveal the woman beneath. She saw the exhaustion etched into his face, the loneliness that matched her own. "You're not alone," she said. Dante let out a ragged breath. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "This is dangerous. You know that." "I know," she breathed. He tilted his head and kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss in the club, fueled by rage and chaos. This was slow. It was aching. It was a question asked and answered in the movement of lips. Dante tasted of scotch and sorrow. He kissed her as if she were made of glass, as if he were terrified he would break her, or perhaps that he would break himself. Maya made a soft sound in her throat and leaned into him. Her hands slid up his chest, feeling the hard muscle and the thudding of his heart beneath the ruined shirt. She needed this. She needed to feel something other than fear. Dante groaned, his arms wrapping around her waist, lifting her effortlessly. Maya wrapped her legs around his waist, and he carried her out of the bright bathroom and into the dim living room, sinking onto the leather sofa with her straddling his lap. They didn't speak. There were no words for this. Dante buried his face in the crook of her neck, pressing hot, open-mouthed kisses to her skin while his hands roamed over her back, pulling her impossibly closer. Maya threaded her fingers through his dark hair, holding him to her. The heat between them spiked, turning into a desperate friction. Dante's hands slid down to her hips, his grip bruising, possessing. Maya arched against him, a friction of denim and desire. For a moment, they were just a man and a woman trying to forget they were at war. Then Dante stopped. He pulled back, his chest heaving, his pupils blown wide. He rested his forehead against hers, their breath mingling in the quiet room. "If we do this," he whispered, his voice rough, "there is no going back. You understand that? If you are mine, you are a target for everyone who hates me." Maya closed her eyes. The reality of who she was and who he was crashed down on her. She was the one hired to kill him. If they crossed this line, the betrayal would be unforgivable when the truth came out. She pulled back slowly, untangling her legs from him and sliding onto the cushion beside him. The loss of contact was a physical pain. "I can't," she said, her voice hollow. "Not until you know." Dante looked at her, confusion warring with the desire still simmering in his eyes. "Know what?" Maya took a deep breath. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her good arm around them. "I didn't grow up in Ohio. I grew up in a training facility. I was recruited when I was 16. I was a runaway, starving, and a woman named Iris found me." Dante went still. He didn't interrupt. "She works for an organization that fixes problems," Maya continued, staring at the floor. "They trained me. They turned me into a weapon. They told me I owed them for saving my life. Every job I take pays down a debt that never seems to get smaller. This job. The money from this job was supposed to be enough to buy me out, to let me disappear." She turned to look at him. "Someone powerful wants you dead. Dante. They hired the organization. They hired me." She waited for the explosion. She waited for him to reach for the gun on the coffee table, but Dante just watched her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were incredibly sad. "You are the assassin," he said softly. "I was," Maya corrected, "until I met you." "Why didn't you do it?" Dante asked. "You had chances." "That night in the hallway. The car. Why am I still breathing?" "Because the file was wrong," Maya said fiercely. "They told me you were a monster. They told me you hurt innocents. But I watched you. I saw you with Nico. I saw you with the shop owners. I saw a man trying to hold back the tide." Dante looked away, staring at the empty fireplace. "I am not a good man, Maya." "You are better than the ones who sent me," she said. "The Harlow Circle," Dante said. Maya froze. "I didn't say the name." "You didn't have to," Dante said tiredly. "They are the only ones with the reach to hire professionals like you, and they are the ones bleeding me dry." He leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. "My father built this syndicate on fear. He broke legs. He burned buildings. When he was killed, I had a choice. Let it fall apart and watch the wolves tear the city apart, or take the throne and try to change the rules." He pointed to the window, where the glow of the city was just visible on the horizon. "That neon cross," he said. "My mother put it up. She was religious. She thought if she put a cross over a den of sin, God might look the other way. Or maybe she thought it would remind us that even people like us deserve a second chance." He looked at Maya. "I have been trying to earn that second chance for 10 years. Maya reached out, taking his hand. "We can stop them, but we have to do it together. I know how Iris thinks. I know how the circle operates." Dante looked at their joined hands. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. He was hurt. The betrayal of her initial lie stung deep, but the fact that she was sitting here, confessing instead of killing him, meant everything. "Here is the deal," Dante said, his voice firming up. We dismantle the Harlow Circle. We find out who specifically ordered the hit. When it is done, I will pay your debt. I will give you the money you need. Dante, I will give you a new identity, he continued, overriding her. And you will leave Westbridge. You will go find that life you wanted. You will be free. Maya felt a sharp pang in her chest. And you? I will stay, Dante said simply. This is my city. I go down with the ship. He squeezed her hand once, hard, then let go. The promise hung in the air between them, a pact that offered freedom at the cost of their hearts. Dante stood up, moving to the window, putting distance between them because he knew if he touched her again, he would never be strong enough to let her go. 3 days later, the trap was sprung. Maya was in the kitchen of the safe house, making coffee. Dante was in the other room on a call with Luca, planning a counterstrike on a Harlow warehouse. Maya's burner phone vibrated. She picked it up. It was a text from Iris. Contract canceled. The client pulled the funding. We are pulling out. Meet me at the old rail yard in 1 hour to hand over the advance and get your papers. Do this, and you are free. Maya stared at the screen. It was too good to be true, but if the Harlow Circle was retreating, it meant Dante was safe. And if she could get her freedom papers from Iris without a fight, she could disappear without Dante having to pay for it. She could save him the cost. She scribbled a note on a napkin, gone to check a lead, back in an hour, and left it on the counter. She grabbed her keys and slipped out the back door, taking one last look at Dante through the doorway. He was pacing, his back to her, safe. She drove to the rail yard, the sky heavy with gray clouds. The yard was deserted. Rows of rusted shipping containers forming a maze. Maya parked and got out, her hand hovering near her weapon. She saw Iris standing by a black SUV in the distance. "Iris," Maya called out, walking forward cautiously. "You came," Iris called back. She wasn't smiling. Maya took another step, and then the instinct hit her. It was too quiet. There were no guards. "It is a trap," she whispered to herself. She spun around to run, but it was too late. 2 men stepped out from behind a container, taser prongs flying through the air. The barbs hit Maya in the chest. Her world turned white, her muscles locked up, and she collapsed to the gravel, convulsing. As the darkness closed in, she saw Iris walking toward her, shaking her head. Iris reached down and pulled the burner phone from Maya's pocket. She dropped it onto the concrete and crushed it under the heel of her boot. "Poor Maya," Iris said, her voice distant and distorted. "You really thought love would save you. At the safe house." Dante walked into the kitchen. "Maya, I need you to—" He stopped. The room was empty. The coffee was still dripping into the pot. He saw the napkin on the counter. He picked it up, reading the scrawled note. A cold dread, colder than any winter night, settled in his stomach. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. "The subscriber you have called is not available." Dante gripped the phone so hard the screen cracked. He looked out the window at the empty driveway where her car should have been. The silence of the house wasn't peaceful anymore. It was a tomb. "Luca!" Dante roared, the sound tearing from his throat. "Get the men! They have her!" The silence in the Sanctuary Club was usually a comfort to Dante Rinaldi, a sign that he controlled the chaos of his city. But tonight, the silence was screaming at him. Dante paced the length of his office, his Italian leather shoes making no sound on the plush carpet. He checked his watch for the 50th time in 10 minutes. It was 2 hours past the scheduled pickup time. Maya was never late. She was precision incarnate, a woman who treated time with military respect. He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed her number again. "The subscriber you have called is not available." The automated voice felt like a taunt. Dante ended the call and hurled the phone across the room. It struck the far wall, cracking the plaster, and landed on the sofa. "Luca!" Dante roared. The heavy oak doors swung open instantly. Luca Brandt stepped inside, his face grim. He knew the signs. He had not seen Dante this unraveled since the night his father died. "Tell me you found something," Dante said, his voice low and vibrating with a dangerous energy. "We found her car," Luca said, bracing himself. It was parked near the old rail yard on the east side. The driver's side door was open. Her phone was on the ground, smashed to pieces. Dante stopped pacing. The air in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. The dread that had been gnawing at his gut turned into a cold, heavy stone. "Who?" Dante asked. "No witnesses," Luca replied quickly. "But there were tire tracks, heavy SUV. Mud from the tires suggests they headed toward the industrial district." Dante walked to the window, looking out at the neon cross buzzing in the rain. He had promised to protect her. He had told her she was safe with him. And under his watch, on his territory, someone had taken her. "Turn the city upside down," Dante ordered, turning back to his consigliere. His eyes were black voids. "Shake down every informant, break every finger if you have to. Find out who moved her. If she is hurt, Luca, I will burn this city to the ground to find the man responsible." Maya Cole tasted blood. She was sitting in a wooden chair in the center of a vast, empty warehouse. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back, the plastic digging into her skin. Her head throbbed where the taser prongs had hit her, leaving her muscles aching and her mind groggy. She blinked, trying to clear her vision. Two figures stood in front of her, illuminated by a single hanging construction light. One was Iris Hale. The woman looked immaculate as always, but her eyes held a fury that bordered on madness. Beside her stood a man Maya had only seen in dossiers, Leon Harlow, and he was taller than she expected, wearing a suit that cost more than the building they were standing in. He had a face that would have been handsome if not for the utter lack of humanity in his eyes. He looked at Maya the way a butcher looks at a side of beef, assessing the cut, indifferent to the life. "You are awake," Leon said. His voice was smooth, like oil over gravel. "Good. We were worried the voltage might have been too high." "Go to hell," Maya rasped. Iris stepped forward and struck Maya across the face. The blow was sharp, snapping Maya's head to the side. "You had one job," Iris hissed, leaning down so her face was inches from Maya's. "One simple job: kill the target, take the money, leave. Instead, you decided to play hero." "I decided not to be a pawn," Maya spat back. "Tasting iron again." Leon chuckled softly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of photographs. He fanned them out like a winning poker hand and held them up for Maya to see. Maya's blood ran cold. The photos were high resolution. The first one showed her and Dante in his car, their faces close, the tension palpable. The second was taken through the window of the safe house, a grainy but unmistakable shot of Dante kissing her, had hands in her hair, her body pressed against his. "We've been watching you for weeks," Leon said, his tone conversational. "At first, we thought you were just getting close to the target, deep cover, very professional. But then we realized you were not acting, were you? Maya." He tossed the photos onto her lap. "You fell in love with the mark," Leon said, shaking his head with mock disappointment. "It is the oldest mistake in the book, and the most fatal." "He knows you are coming," Maya said, lifting her chin. "He will kill you all." "Perhaps," Leon mused. "But he will not kill you, and that is why you are going to help us." Leon crouched down, balancing on the balls of his feet. "Here is the offer. Maya, tomorrow night I have arranged a peace negotiation at the Sanctuary Club. I told Dante I want to end the hostilities. He will agree because he thinks he is winning. You will be there. You will walk in by my side. I will never help you," Maya said. "You will," Iris interjected, "because if you do not, we will kill him slowly. We will make you watch, and then we will erase you. No body, no grave, just gone." Leon smiled, a thin, shark-like expression. "But if you do as you are told, if you pull the gun I give you and put a bullet in his heart at the meeting, I will let you walk away. I will even give you the 2 million. You can mourn him on a beach in Tahiti." Maya looked at the photos on her lap. She looked at Dante's face in the grainy image, the desperation in the way he held her. She realized how thoroughly they had been played, but beneath the fear, a cold resolve began to harden in her chest. "I understand," Maya said quietly. Leon stood up, smoothing his jacket. "Smart girl." Maya lowered her head. hiding her eyes. They thought they were using her love as a weapon. They didn't realize that love had given her something she never had as an assassin, something worth dying for. Dante was tearing his office apart. Maps were swept off the desk. Chairs were overturned. He was a man possessed. It had been 6 hours in the world of kidnapping. 6 hours was an eternity. The door opened. It wasn't Luca. It was Nico. The young cousin looked terrified, twisting a cap in his hands. He stood in the doorway, looking at the wreckage of the office. "Dante?" Nico whispered. "Get out, Nico!" Dante snarled, not looking up. "I am busy. I heard something," Nico said quickly. "On the street. I was down by the docks, collecting the envelopes like you asked." "I heard 2 of Harlow's runners talking." Dante froze. He turned slowly, his eyes locking onto his cousin. "What did you hear?" "They were talking about a package," Nico stammered. "High value. They said Leon moved it to the old textile factory on 4th Street, the one with the boarded-up windows." Dante didn't hesitate. He walked over to Nico and gripped the boy's shoulder. "Are you sure?" "They said the boss was there personally," Nico said. "Dante, is it Elena? Is she the package?" Dante didn't answer. He grabbed his coat and his shoulder holster. "Luca!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the club. "Get the crew. We are going to 4th Street." The textile factory was a fortress of brick and shadow. Dante didn't bother with stealth. He didn't have time. He pulled up to the front gate in his armored SUV and rammed it, the metal screeching as the lock gave way. "Go, go, go!" Dante yelled as the car skidded to a halt. He leaped out, his weapon raised. Luca and 3 other enforcers flanked him. Gunfire erupted immediately from the upper windows. Dante didn't flinch. He moved forward, firing suppressed shots with lethal accuracy. He saw a muzzle flash in a 2nd-story window and put 2 rounds into the frame. The shooting stopped. "Cover fire," Dante ordered. While Luca and the men laid down a wall of lead, Dante kicked open the side door. He moved through the dark corridors of the factory like a wraith, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Please be alive. Please be alive. He reached the main floor. 3 guards stood between him and a chair in the center of the room. Dante didn't slow down. He shot the first man in the knee, then the chest. The second man turned, raising a shotgun, but Dante was faster, dropping him with a headshot. The third man threw down his weapon and ran. Dante ignored him. His eyes were fixed on the woman in the chair. "Maya!" He holstered his gun and sprinted to her. She was slumped forward, blood matting her hair on one side, her face pale. He fell to his knees beside her, pulling a knife from his boot to slash the zip ties. "Maya, look at me," he commanded, his voice cracking. She lifted her head. Her eyes were hazy, but when they focused on him, they widened. "Dante?" she whispered. "You came. I told you I would." He choked out. He cut her loose. As soon as her hands were free, she collapsed forward. Dante caught her, pulling her into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her neck, holding her so tightly his own muscles shook. "I have you," he murmured into her hair. "I have you. You are safe." Maya clung to him, her fingers digging into his coat. For a moment, amidst the smell of gunpowder and blood, she allowed herself to be weak. She breathed in his scent, leather and rain, and let the tears fall. The safe house was quiet, but the air was thick with unsaid words. A doctor had come and gone, stitching the cut on Maya's scalp and treating her dehydration. Now, she sat on the edge of the bed, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Dante stood by the door. He had washed the blood off his hands, but he still looked like a man who had walked through fire. "Tell me," Dante said. His voice was calm, but it was the calm before a storm. Maya took a deep breath. She owed him this. She owed him everything. "It is the Harlow circle," she began. "But it goes deeper. The man who held me was Leon Harlow. The woman, or her name is Iris Hale. She was my handler." Dante went still. "Handler?" "I told you I was recruited," Maya said, staring at her hands. "I didn't tell you what for. Iris runs a Black Ops unit for the Circle. They hire assassins, Dante, they clean up messes." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "I was the mess cleaner. Iris sent me here 5 weeks ago. My contract was to kill you. The deadline was 1 week." Dante looked as if she had slapped him. He took a step back, his hand instinctively moving toward his waist before stopping. The hurt in his eyes was raw, unguarded. "You came to my club to kill me," he said, his voice hollow. "Yes," Maya whispered. "The night we met," Dante said, connecting the dots. "The night I showed you how to pour a drink. You were planning how to murder me." "Yes." Dante turned away, pacing the small room. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration and pain. And the attack at the warehouse? The ambush? That was them trying to speed up the timeline, Maya said. "But Dante, listen to me. I never pulled the trigger." "Because you got caught," Dante shouted, spinning around. The anger finally broke through. "Because you got in too deep." "No." Maya stood up, the blanket falling to the floor. She crossed the room, ignoring the dizziness. She grabbed the front of his shirt, forcing him to look at her. "I had a clear shot the first night," she yelled, tears streaming down her face. "I had a clear shot in the hallway when you were hugging Nico. I had a clear shot in the car. I had a gun in my hand every single day. Dante, and every single time, I chose you." Dante stared down at her. His jaw was clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. He looked at her hands clutching his shirt, the hands of a killer that had been sent to end him. "Why?" he demanded roughly. "Because I saw who you were," Maya sobbed. "And then I fell in love with you, and I couldn't do it. I would rather die than do it." The confession hung in the air. Dante looked at her tear-streaked face. He saw the bruises he had failed to prevent. He saw the desperate truth in her eyes. She had betrayed her mission, her handlers, and her own survival instinct for him. The anger drained out of him, leaving only a desperate, aching need. "You are a fool," Dante whispered, his voice shaking. He grabbed her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a collision. It was a kiss that tasted of salt and desperation. Dante pushed her back against the wall, his body pressing into hers as if he could merge them into one person. Maya responded with equal intensity, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him down. They kissed like it was the end of the world. There was no hesitation, no question of right or wrong. There was only the terrifying realization that they were the only two people on Earth who understood each other. Dante pulled back, his forehead resting against hers. His breathing was ragged. "I trust you," he said. It was the most dangerous thing he had ever said. "I trust you, Maya." Maya let out a shuddering breath. "Leon made me an offer, a peace meeting, tomorrow night at the sanctuary. He wants me to kill you there." Dante's eyes hardened. The lever vanished, and the dawn returned. "A trap," Dante said. "Yes," Maya nodded. "He expects me to walk in by his side. He expects me to end it." Dante stepped back, his mind already racing, calculating. A cold smile touched his lips. "Then we will give him exactly what he wants," Dante said. "We will give him a show, and then we will bury him." The next 12 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. Dante didn't sleep. He and Luca coordinated the movement of 50 men. They reinforced the sanctuary club, hiding shotguns under tables, planting men in the ventilation shafts, and positioning snipers on the adjacent rooftops. Maya sat in the corner of the strategy room, cleaning her weapon. She watched Dante work. He was brilliant, terrifying, and utterly commanding. "You will walk in with Leon." Dante explained the plan, pointing to the blueprint of the club. "You have to look like you have turned. You have to be cold. Can you do that?" Maya snapped the slide of her pistol back into place. She looked up at him. "I was trained to be cold. Dante, playing the villain is easy. It is being the hero that is hard." Dante walked over to her. He took the gun from her hand and set it on the table. He took her hands in his. "We might not walk out of there," he said softly. "I know," Maya said. "If things go wrong," Dante said, "if I go down, you run. You take the back exit, and you do not look back. Do you understand?" "No," Maya said firmly. "We walk out together, or we do not walk out at all." Night fell over Westbridge. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black. Dante and Maya stood outside the back entrance of the Sanctuary Club. Above them, the giant neon cross buzzed, casting its electric blue light over their faces. It washed out the color of their skin, making them look like ghosts. Dante was dressed in a black suit, tailored to conceal the Kevlar vest beneath. Maya wore a long, elegant dress with a slit high enough to access the knife strapped to her thigh. The silence before the battle was heavy. Dante reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair behind Maya's ear. His hand lingered on her cheek. "My mother used to say this cross was a beacon," Dante murmured, looking up at the light. "She said it guided lost souls home." He looked down at Maya. His eyes were dark pools of emotion. "I was lost for a long time, Maya, until you walked into my bar." Maya felt her throat tighten. "We are going to make it, Dante. If this is the last night we have," Dante whispered, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "I do not want to waste a second of it." Maya stepped into him. Sliding her arms around his waist, she tilted her head back, and he kissed her. It was deep and slow, a stark contrast to the violence awaiting them inside. It was a kiss of promise, a kiss that said everything they didn't have time to speak aloud. Under the flickering blue light of the neon cross, they clung to each other, two scarred souls bracing against the coming storm. Dante pulled away reluctantly. He checked his watch. "It is time," he said. Maya nodded. She smoothed her dress, her face shifting into a mask of icy indifference. The assassin was back. "Ready," she said. Dante opened the door, and together they stepped into the darkness of the club. The Sanctuary Club did not look like a place of celebration tonight. It looked like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. The usual thrum of bass and the press of sweating bodies were gone. In their place was a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the low electric hum of the neon cross suspended above the atrium. The blue light filtered down through the glass skylight, casting long, skeletal shadows across the polished floor. Dante Rinaldi stood at the center of the room. He wore a tuxedo, black on black, a sartorial choice that made him look like a shadow cut from the night itself. Beside him stood Maya. She wore a floor-length gown of black silk that clung to her frame like a second skin. It was elegant, lethal, and carefully chosen. The high slit on the left side concealed the throwing knife strapped to her thigh, and the structured bodice hid the tension radiating from her diaphragm. To the 20 men and women gathered in the room, corrupt city councilmen, rival gang lieutenants, and the elite of the Harlow Circle, she looked like a trophy. She looked like the weakness Leon Harlow had predicted, but Maya was not a trophy. She was a tripwire. The double doors swung open and Leon Harlow entered, flanked by Iris Hale and 4 heavy-set bodyguards. Leon looked entirely too comfortable. He walked with the swagger of a man who had already read the last page of the book and knew he won. Iris was sharper, her eyes scanning the room, landing on Maya with a look of cold, possessive expectation. "Dante," Leon said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You certainly know how to set a mood. It feels a bit like a funeral in here." "I thought it appropriate," Dante replied smoothly. "Since we are here to bury the hatchet." Leon laughed, a dry sound that lacked humor. He stopped 10 feet away, his men fanning out. "Bury the hatchet. I like that. Let us hope that is all we are burying." The negotiations began with the ritualistic exchange of lies. Maps were laid out on a table. Territories were discussed. Councilman Mercer, sweating profusely in the corner, nodded vigorously at every suggestion Leon made, clearly terrified of the shifting power dynamics. Maya stood silently by Dante's right hand. She felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat that threatened to drown out the conversation. She kept her hands clasped in front of her, her fingers brushing the cold metal of a ring Dante had given her an hour ago. A signal. "You are being very generous, Dante," Leon said, tapping a finger on the map of the South Ward. "Giving up the docks? That is your main revenue stream. I'm tired of the war, Leon," Dante lied, his face a mask of weary resignation. "I want peace. If the docks are the price, so be it." Leon smiled, and it was a predatory thing. He looked at Maya. "I hear you have changed your priorities recently. I hear you have let a certain woman get too close." Distraction is a dangerous thing for a man in your position. Maya felt Dante stiffen beside her, but he didn't take the bait. She's not a distraction, Dante said softly. She is my counsel. Is she? Leon asked. He looked at Iris. Iris stepped forward. She held a silver platter, usually used for serving champagne. On it lay a single black pistol. Then let us seal the deal, Iris said, her voice cutting through the air. A gesture of good faith, the circle requires a show of loyalty to finalize the treaty. She slid the platter across the table toward Maya. Finish the contract, Maya, Iris said, her eyes boring into Maya's. Do what you were paid to do. Show Mr. Rinaldi that business always comes before pleasure. The room went deathly still. The air was so thick it felt like water. Leon was smirking. He expected Maya to pick up the gun and execute Dante in front of his own men. It was the ultimate power move. Maya looked at the gun. Then she looked at Dante. He didn't look at the weapon. He looked only at her. His dark eyes filled with a terrifying amount of trust. Maya reached out. Her hand was steady. She picked up the pistol. The metal was cold. Leon's smile widened. Maya turned toward Dante, raising the weapon for a heartbeat. The world stopped. Iris looked triumphant. Then Maya spun. No, she said. The word was a gunshot in the silence. She turned the weapon on Leon and fired. Bang! The shot took Leon in the shoulder. Spinning him around, he screamed, clutching his suit as blood bloomed like a dark flower. Traitor! Iris shrieked, diving behind a pillar. Now, Dante roared. Chaos erupted. The windows of the mezzanine shattered as Dante's hidden snipers opened fire on the Harlow guards. The room dissolved into a storm of noise and violence. Maya didn't stop moving. She grabbed Dante's arm, pulling him toward the cover of the heavy oak bar. Bullets chewed up the floor where they had just been standing. You missed his head, Dante shouted over the roar of gunfire, drawing his own weapon. I was aiming for his ego, Maya shouted back, firing 2 shots at a gunman rushing their position. They moved as a unit, a 2-person army amidst the bedlam. But the Harlow circle was desperate. Iris popped out from behind the pillar, her face twisted in a mask of pure hate. She didn't aim for Dante. She aimed for the woman who had betrayed her. Maya saw the movement in her peripheral vision. She shoved Dante down, turning to return fire. She was a fraction of a second too slow. A bullet struck her in the side, just above the hip. The impact was like a sledgehammer. It knocked the breath from her lungs and threw her backward onto the floor. Maya! The scream tore from Dante's throat. He scrambled across the broken glass, ignoring the bullets flying over his head. He dropped to his knees beside her, shielding her body with his own. The neon cross above them had been hit by a stray bullet. It flickered wildly, raining sparks down like electric snow under the strobe-like blue light. Dante looked down at her. His face was a mask of pure terror. Hey, Maya gasped, clutching her side. Blood seeped through her fingers, staining the black silk of her dress a glossy crimson. I think I ruined the dress. Do not talk, Dante commanded, his voice trembling. He pressed his hands over hers, applying pressure to the wound. Do not you dare talk. You stay with me. You hear me? You do not get to leave me now. We are winning, she whispered, her eyes fluttering. I do not care about winning, Dante yelled, tears mixing with the dust on his face. He leaned down, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I only care about you. Stay awake, Maya. Stay awake. Rage, hot and blinding, flooded Dante's veins. He looked up. He saw his men pinning down the Harlow forces. He saw Leon trying to crawl toward the exit. Luca, Dante screamed. Get the medic. Get her out of here. Luca slid into position, dragging a medical kit. As soon as Luca's hands replaced his on the wound, Dante stood up. He was no longer the businessman. He was the storm. He moved through the firefight with a terrifying singular focus. He walked straight toward Leon Harlow, firing with precision. One shot took out a guard. Another disarmed a man trying to flank him. He reached Leon, who was clutching his shoulder, pale and sweating. The war is over, Leon, Dante said. He didn't kill him. Death was too easy. He pistol-whipped Leon, knocking him unconscious. Secure him, Dante ordered his men. And find Iris! We have her, a voice called out. Two of Dante's enforcers dragged Iris from behind the pillar. She was disheveled, her weapon gone. She looked at Dante with defiance, but when she looked past him and saw Maya still breathing, her shoulders slumped. She knew she had lost. The shooting stopped. The silence returned. But this time it was heavy with the smell of gunpowder and the copper tang of blood. Dante didn't wait for the all clear. He ran back to where Luca was working on Maya. "She is losing blood, boss," Luca said, his hands slick. "But the bullet missed the vital organs. She is going to make it." Dante collapsed to his knees. Taking Maya's hand, she squeezed his fingers weakly. "You are so dramatic," she whispered, a ghost of a smile on her pale lips. Dante let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He kissed her hand, pressing it to his forehead. Sirens wailed in the distance. The city was waking up to the noise. "We have 5 minutes," Dante said, standing up. He looked at Luca. "Is everything in place?" "Yes," Luca said. "The story is ready. Internal power struggle." The Harlow Circle turned on each other. "Leon and Iris are being moved to the basement. The police will find bodies of their enforcers." "And me?" Dante asked. "Mortally wounded," Luca said solemnly. "Carried away by loyalists, presumed dead by morning." Dante nodded. He looked around the club. He looked at the shattered neon cross, sputtering its last dying sparks. It was fitting. The symbol of his old life was broken. "Burn the files," Dante ordered. "Leave nothing." He picked Maya up in his arms. She groaned softly but settled against his chest. "Where are we going?" she murmured. "Away," Dante said. "We're going to be ghosts. Maya." In the back room, a sterile medical suite hidden behind a false wall. The doctor finished the last stitch. "She needs rest," the doctor said, packing his bag, "and antibiotics, but she is strong. She will heal." Dante nodded, slipping a thick envelope of cash into the doctor's hand. "Forget you were here." "I was never here," the doctor agreed, and left. Dante pulled a chair up to the narrow bed. Maya was awake, looking better now that the pain medication had kicked in. She watched him. "So," she said, her voice raspy, "I heard a rumor. Dante Rinaldi is dead." "Tragic accident," Dante said, a smile finally reaching his eyes. "Gunned down in his prime. And the Sanctuary Club?" "Sold to investors," Dante said. "Or seized by the state. It does not matter. It is just a building." He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. His hand was shaking slightly. "I thought I lost you," he admitted, his voice quiet. "You cannot get rid of me that easily," Maya teased. "I still owe you a drink." Dante laughed. It was a rusty sound, unused to the light, but it was real. He leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, careful, lingering. It tasted of survival. It tasted of a future that hadn't existed 24 hours ago. "Rest now," Dante whispered against her lips. "When you wake up, we will be gone." "Where?" Maya asked, her eyes drooping. "Somewhere without neon lights," Dante promised. 6 months later, the air smelled of salt and jasmine. The bar was small, located at the end of a cobblestone street in a coastal town where the locals spoke Spanish and didn't ask questions about the past. There was no sign above the door, just a warm, yellow light spilling out onto the patio. Inside, the music was soft, a jazz record spinning on a turntable in the corner. The walls were lined with books and bottles of local wine. Maya stood behind the bar, wiping down the mahogany counter. She wore a simple white sundress, her hair loose and wavy from the humidity. The scar on her side was a faint pink line now, a memory etched into her skin. The last customer paid his tab and wandered out into the warm night. Maya flipped the sign in the window to closed and locked the door. She turned around to find Dante watching her. He was leaning against the doorframe of the back office. He wore a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up and canvas trousers. The sharp, tailored suits were gone. The darkness under his eyes had faded, replaced by lines from squinting at the sun. "You are staring," Maya said, smiling. "I am admiring the view," Dante corrected. He walked toward her, moving with an easy grace that was no longer coiled with tension. He reached the bar and held out his hand. "Dance with me." There is no music, Maya pointed out, though the record was still humming softly. There is enough, Dante said. She took his hand. He pulled her out from behind the bar and into the center of the small, empty room. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Maya rested her hands on his shoulders, linking her fingers behind his neck. They swayed together, moving to a rhythm that only they could hear. It wasn't the frantic, desperate clinging of the safe house or the club. It was slow. It was steady. It was the movement of two people who had nowhere else they needed to be. Maya rested her head on his chest. She could hear his heart beating, strong, consistent, real. "Do you miss it?" she asked softly. "The power, the city?" Dante rested his chin on the top of her head. "I miss the espresso. The rest of it, no. I have everything I need right here." He pulled back slightly to look at her. His eyes were warm, reflecting the golden light of the room. "Do you?" he asked. "Do you still wait for the door to be kicked in?" Maya looked at the door she had just locked. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Old habits die hard, but then I look at you, and I remember that the ghosts are back in Westbridge. We are here." "We are here," Dante echoed. He leaned down and kissed her. It was a kiss that contained the history of gunfire and rain, of neon lights and blood, but it was softened by the peace of the ocean and the promise of the morning. It was deep and tender, a seal on a pact made in the shadows and kept in the light. They were no longer the assassin and the target. They were no longer the boss and the spy. They were just Dante and Maya, two scarred souls who had walked through the fire and chosen each other over the ashes. And as the needle reached the end of the record and the room fell silent, they didn't let go. They just held on, knowing that this quiet, simple warmth was the only empire worth ruling. Thank you so much for reading the final chapter of Under the Neon Cross. It has been an incredible journey bringing Dante and Maya's story to life for you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below with your country or city. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories so you do not miss our next adventure. We have many more tales of danger, passion, and redemption coming soon. Share your thoughts on the ending in the comments. Did Dante and Maya get the happy ending they deserved? I can't wait to read your feedback. Until next time.